Welcome to Youth Are Yotzrim. Yotzrim is a Hebrew word which simply means creators. My name is Heather Kiros, and I'm the author of First Century Youth Ministry. And I believe when it comes to their faith, youth and young adults aren't just online consumers, but they're online
creators.
That's right. And I'm here with Tyler. And Tyler is a student whom I had the privilege of getting to know for a number of years when I served as a youth minister in Illinois. I got to see Tyler grow up from this sixth grader into this strong man of God. And now Tyler is seeking to get his minister's license and is enrolled at Liberty University, getting a biblical studies degree. And Tyler, we're super excited to have you on today's episode.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on here as well. It's an honor.
Thank you. So today, Tyler and I are going to be tackling the question of how do you know that you're called to ministry? So Tyler, being somebody who is enrolled in college right now, getting his minister's license, those types of things, how did you know? Give us some insight into what God has done in your life to get you where you are today.
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually get asked that quite a bit. Basically, my whole family has kind of always been involved in some sort of ministry. I've got an aunt that runs a camp. My sister and her husband are actually helping out with the camp. One of my other sisters helps out with church. My grandpa is a pastor, so on and so forth. So I've just always grown up in you get involved, you help out, that sort of thing. But it wasn't really until around 8th grade / freshman year of high school that I kind of started being like, what do you want me to do, God? What do you want me personally to do? And that's kind of when I started to seek that out. And that was also the time that I think you thankfully let me help out a little bit, and you kind of took me under your wing and showed me this is kind of how it goes a little bit. And that's kind of when I started to fall into love with ministry, and I think that's when God kind of caught my attention.
That's awesome. So you said, you kind of had this family background of being in ministry, and it was just kind of this innate thing. Hey, you just serve, you get involved in God's church. And then you said around 8th grade, freshman, you really started seeking the Lord and asking, God, what is your will for my life? So can you kind of bring us into that, maybe a little bit more of that experience of how God kind of spoke to you, kind of through those prayers and maybe through the guidance of spiritual mentors and others in your life?
Yeah, so like I said, that was basically towards right before 8th grade graduation. I just felt like God was spiritually hitting me upside the head and saying, hey, you need to stop just thinking about yourself and start thinking about other people. You have so many opportunities that you could speak to other people and save their life eternally, but you're not doing it. And once God brought that to my attention and just kind of caught me a little bit off guard, and I just kind of was like, am I really? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized there's a lot of chances that every single person has that you don't really think about it. But every time someone passes you on the street, or anytime you see someone in the hallway, or even just at school, when you have to do something for an assignment, you have an opportunity right there. And it's so easy to miss.
Yeah, for sure. So I think what I hear you saying is that the way that we hear from God is by being present with him and listening and being faithful in the small things.
Yeah. And also seeking out him as well, because he says that in his word that draw near to him and he will draw near to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you kind of talked with me about this in the pre-show, right? You told me that you wanted to go to school for video game design, but then you changed gears and you started doing a biblical studies degree. So there's a lot of teenagers out there who are looking towards college and they're saying to themselves, I would have a lot of fun being this thing or that thing, or I could make a lot of money, right, doing this thing or becoming that, right? And you probably struggled and dealt with some of that, right? Like wanting to get into video game design. So tell us, how did you get to a point where you said, you know what, God, I'm laying it down, whatever you want. What encouragement or advice would you give to that teenager, maybe who feels a bit conflicted, possibly like you did when you were facing this decision of should I go into ministry or should I go into video game design?
Well, with that example, and really, I guess like any major or degree, um, I would say if you feel any hint of possibility that God might be calling you into ministry, I would encourage you to just like look for someone in ministry and say, hey, can I get involved? Or hey, can I get plugged in? Does this need help? Does that need help? And just be willing to serve. Like at the church that I'm going to right now, someone that just joined but was one of the servants said that she would be even willing to scrub the toilets. And now, just a couple months later, she's the new children's pastor.
Wow,
So
that's
just
awesome.
go in with an open mind and a willingness to serve, and you never know where God will take you.
That's right. That's awesome. I think that's such a great reminder, Tyler, that, when it comes to people who are in ministry, it really starts with being willing, as Jesus showed us, to wash somebody's feet. And that when we're faithful in the small things, in the little things of scrubbing the toilets, right? People see
Mm-hmm.
that we're willing to make ministry not about us. And I think that's so key. And I think that's what I hear you saying is that when it comes to a youth and young adult and maybe a teenager who's facing graduation and wondering, what should I go into? What should I study? Hey, take a step back. What's going to get you to a point where you become a true servant and you don't make life about you? Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, Tyler, is there any encouragement or any words of maybe wisdom or something like that that you would want to offer to a high school student or maybe even a young adult who's in college and maybe struggling right now with wondering what is God's will for my life when it comes to my vocation?
Uh, that's a that's a very interesting question, especially because that's actually something I'm dealing with in my own life right now.
Mm,
Actually, is location where I am and should I move, should I stay, and things like that.
mhm,
Um, First and foremost, you got to get in the word and you got to pray, God, what do you want?
mhm,
And it's not easy, especially because, like I said, with me originally wanting to go into game design, I made similar mistake to what Marty did, where I only chose one college. I knew I only want to go to school for this,
mhm,
and no other college, no other degree, nothing. I'm just gonna go ahead with this plan. Got accepted. Everything was going smoothly.
mhm.
Um, and then right when I started, um, the classes were a lot more difficult than I expected, even though I knew that they were going to be difficult. And that was where God basically said, "You can keep doing like being like this if you want, but
Mm.
you're just hurting yourself."
Wow. Yeah. So
So
you felt that conviction of the Spirit.
yeah.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, Marty is a mutual friend of ours. He's now a youth pastor in Ohio. He's a guy who I would say had a good rapport with Tyler and was a spiritual mentor in his life as well. And struggled, right, with wanting to become a math teacher. And now he's a youth pastor. And so, Tyler, I'm super proud of you. I always saw that hungry lion for God inside of you. And I'm just so happy and so grateful that you stayed faithful to Jesus and now you're on a path of growing in humility, of growing in grace, growing in that courage, and serving the Lord and doing His kingdom work. So, Tyler, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Youth Are Yotzrim. So, anything else before we go, Tyler?
I don't think so, other than just prayer that
Hmm.
I stay in the Lord's will and I do what He wants.
Yeah.
My church is actually adopting another church right now and restoring it. It was like abandoned and stuff, and they're gonna call it a dinner church. So I
Wow.
don't really know what I'm gonna do there, but I feel the Lord calling me there to do something.
Awesome. Well, hey, for those of you that are watching this episode, would you just take a minute right now to pray for Tyler that he would seek God's will for his life and what his role might be in this ministry that his church is doing? So, Tyler, thanks again for joining us. We'll see you guys later. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.